Let's talk about the 12 deadliest Native American warriors of all time, measured by how they fought, how they planned, and how deeply their battles changed history. Let's ride. Manuelito. At number 12, we begin with the face of Navajo resistance, Manuelito, the warrior who turned defiance into legacy. Born among the Diné in modern-day New Mexico, he rose in an era when his people were being driven from their homeland. Manuelito became one of the last great Navajo war chiefs, a master of stealth raids, ambush tactics, and terrain advantage. When the U.S. Army came, he fought until the bitter end. Game over wasn't in his code, even as the long walk began, an event that drove thousands into exile at Bosque Redondo. He survived that march and led his people home, not as a conqueror, but as a protector-class leader. In peace, he championed education and unity for future generations. His playstyle? Guerrilla tactician turned elder statesman. High defense, high endurance, built to outlast empires. He didn't reclaim every battle, but Manuelito's leadership helped ensure the Navajo people still had a future to fight for. Manuelito lands in Tier 3 for keeping his people alive when empires tried to erase them. Quick, before we ride into the next battle, if you want more legendary loadouts from history, hit subscribe. Pontiac. At number 11, meet Pontiac. Not the car, but the Ottawa war chief who made the British tremble. Born near the Great Lakes in modern-day Michigan, he rose as a strategist and unifier, bringing together more than a dozen tribes, including the Shawnee, Miami, and Potawatomi, to resist British expansion after the French and Indian War from 1754 to 1763. In 1763, he initiated a full map event, simultaneous raids on nearly every British fort west of the Appalachians. His warriors overran 9 forts and besieged Fort Detroit for months, using stealth, deception, and ambush like a real-time strategy master. Just before the siege, a French trader recorded Pontiac saying, "We must be of one heart, one mind, one determination to drive these dogs out." But alliances frayed, and by 1765, his rebellion collapsed. Still, his uprising forced Britain to rethink its colonial policies, proof that one coalition could shake an entire empire. His playstyle? Coalition commander. Leadership buff activated, morale boost for all allied units. He didn't conquer the British, but Pontiac's rebellion showed how unity could become a weapon. Pontiac lands in Tier 3 because his uprising nearly broke the British grip on North America, but internal fractures kept his revolution from leveling up to victory. Roman Nose. At number 10, meet Roman Nose, the Cheyenne war chief who became a nightmare for the U.S. cavalry. Born around 1830 near present-day Colorado, he earned a reputation as the ultimate plains duelist, a speed-build fighter with perfect dodge frames. To his people, he was more than a fighter. He was said to be protected by spiritual power, a medicine shield that made him invincible in battle. During the Colorado War and Red Cloud's War, Roman Nose led devastating hit-and-run attacks on wagon trains and forts. He rode first into gunfire, breaking enemy lines before anyone else even broke a sweat. His code was simple. "It is not well to be afraid. Fear makes bad warriors." And he lived and died by that creed. At the Battle of Beecher Island, he triggered his own debuff, breaking his medicine shield ritual and losing his invincibility frame. He rode anyway, though, and was struck down mid-charge. His playstyle? High-risk, high-reward berserker. Insane speed and morale damage, but one broken ritual and the buff expires. He fell as he fought, headlong, fearless, and undefeated in spirit. Roman Nose lands in Tier 3 because his unmatched courage made him a legend, but his recklessness kept him from building something that lasted. Victorio. At number 9, meet Victorio, the Warm Springs Apache war chief who waged war with nothing but grit, speed, and terrain. Born around 1825 in modern-day New Mexico, he mastered ambush tactics and desert warfare early on, later fighting beside Geronimo as one of the Apache's sharpest field commanders. When the U.S. forced his people from their homeland at Ojo Caliente, Victorio refused exile. With just a few hundred warriors and families, he waged a 2-year campaign across the southwest and northern Mexico, outmaneuvering thousands of soldiers with speed, terrain mastery, and relentless will. His code was simple: better to die fighting than live as prisoners. And he kept it to the end. By 1880, out of ammo and surrounded in the Sierra Madre, Victorio fought to the last shot rather than be taken alive. His playstyle? Guerrilla Commander. Stealth maxed, mobility unmatched, survival stats overpowered until the endgame. He didn't win the war, but his campaign remains one of history's purest forms of asymmetric warfare. Victorio lands in Tier 3 because his hit-and-run mastery humiliated larger armies, but his resistance ended with him. Chief Joseph. At number 8, we have Chief Joseph, leader of the Nez Perce, the man who fought a war he never wanted. Born in Hinmatoyalatkit in 1840 in the Wallowa Valley of modern-day Oregon, Joseph was the son of a peaceful chief who signed treaties America later broke. When soldiers came to force his people onto a reservation, Joseph chose resistance over surrender. In 1877, he led fewer than 300 warriors and 500 women and children on a 1,400-mile retreat against the U.S. Army, outmaneuvering General Howard for 3 months through mountains and rivers. He ran an incredible defensive build, ambush triggers, mobility boosts, and stealth upgrades so clean it nearly broke the chase mechanic. But just 40 miles from the Canadian border and freedom, Joseph was surrounded. Exhausted and outgunned, he surrendered with immortal words, "I will fight no more forever." His playstyle? Defensive genius, morale boost aura, maxed endurance, turned survival into strategy. He lost the battle log, but unlocked the rarest achievement, respect from his enemies. Chief Joseph lands in Tier 2 because his retreat was a masterclass in endurance and leadership, but surrender kept him just short of legend. Sitting Bull. At number 7, we've got Sitting Bull, the Hunkpapa Lakota chief who broke the myth of U.S. invincibility. Born around 1831 near the Grand River in modern South Dakota, he grew up hunting buffalo and fighting rivals long before the U.S. Army ever arrived. By the 1870s, he had become both a war leader and a prophet, the voice of Lakota defiance against broken treaties and forced exile. When asked why he resisted, he said simply, "What treaty that the whites have kept has the red man broken? Not one." In 1876, his vision of soldiers falling upside down in the sky foretold a great battle, and that prophecy came true at Little Bighorn, where Sitting Bull did not lead, but pulled off the ultimate team buff, 3 nations syncing perfectly for a total squad wipe. It obliterated Custer's 7th Cavalry using terrain, mobility, and crossfire tactics, shooting from horse and cover and closing the ring again and again until the 7th Cavalry was crushed. Custer and all of the 210 soldiers under his command were overrun within an hour. Sitting Bull's legend outlasted the war. As the buffalo vanished and the frontier closed, Sitting Bull became a living legend, performing in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, then returning home to lead his people again. He was killed in 1890 during an arrest attempt, defiant to the end. His playstyle? Spiritual Commander. High charisma buff, morale control maxed, prophecy cooldown always active. He didn't rule by the sword, he ruled by belief. Sitting Bull lands in Tier 2 because his prophecy united nations and crushed Custer, but no vision is as impactful as a successful conquest. Osceola. At number 6, meet Osceola, the Seminole war leader who turned the Florida swamps into a battlefield no army could conquer. Born in 1804 near Tallahassee, Alabama, he was the son of a Creek mother and an English father, a warrior forged between 2 worlds. When the U.S. tried to remove the Seminole under the Indian Removal Act, Osceola refused, declaring that no treaty signed under threat was worth the ink. Then came blood. After a U.S. officer murdered one of his allies, Osceola swore vengeance, saying, "I will make the white man red with blood, and then blacken him in the sun and rain." He launched a guerrilla campaign through the Everglades like he was designing a stealth level, placing ambush triggers everywhere, soldiers walking straight into the code, using deception, night raids, and terrain mastery to humiliate the U.S. Army. Outnumbered, but never outsmarted, his forces vanished into the swamps after every strike. In 1837, he entered peace talks under a white flag, only to be captured by deceit. Sick with malaria and rage, Osceola died in prison months later, his spirit still undefeated. His playstyle? Swamp Assassin. Stealth maxed, deception buff active, terrain advantage permanent. He never surrendered, never broke, and never forgave, and in the end, even betrayal couldn't cage his legend. Osceola lands in Tier 2 because his ambush warfare and vengeance reshaped the Seminole War, but treachery cut his campaign short. Geronimo. At number 5, we've got Geronimo, the Bedonkohe Apache war chief who became the face of resistance itself. Born in 1829 in Nodoñon Canyon in modern New Mexico, on the prairies where the wind blew free and there was nothing to break the light of the sun. That freedom defined him, and he refused to live without it. After Mexican soldiers massacred his wife and children, Geronimo swore vengeance and became the most feared guerrilla in North America. He could vanish into the desert like smoke, raiding forts, freeing captives, and surviving ambushes no one else could. Soldiers called him the devil who rides in the wind. By the 1880s, with just 36 warriors, Geronimo held off 5,000 US troops, the largest manhunt in American history. When he finally surrendered in 1886, he did it on his own terms, not as a defeated man, but as a legend. His playstyle? Desert Phantom. Mobility maxed, stealth unmatched, ultimate hit and fade loadout. He fought 4 empires and never logged out. To the US, he was an outlaw. To the Apache, he was freedom incarnate. Geronimo lands in Tier 2 because his endurance and defiance outlived empires. Even surrender couldn't delete his legacy. Before we rank the final 4 warriors, quick, if you're vibing with this, hit subscribe. We rank historical figures and battles every week. Don't miss the next one. Crazy Horse. At number 4, we have Crazy Horse, the Oglala Lakota war chief who fought not for fame, but for freedom. Born to Shunkeewitko around 1840 near the Black Hills of modern South Dakota, he was quiet, spiritual, and deadly precise, the embodiment of humility and strength. He fought with purpose, not ego, refusing photos, medals, or titles, saying only, "I do not want riches. I want peace and love." During the Great Sioux War of 1876, Crazy Horse became the unstoppable blade of Lakota resistance. He always led the charge, triggering back-to-back boss fights at Rosebud and Little Bighorn, where his charge shattered Custer's lines. While Sitting Bull's vision united the warriors, it was Crazy Horse's tactics that delivered the kill shot. Even US scouts said he was like a ghost, appearing, striking, and vanishing without a sound. But victory was short-lived. As more troops poured west, Crazy Horse refused to surrender. And in 1877, he was stabbed to death while resisting arrest. Still unarmed, still defiant. His playstyle? Spirit Warrior. Speed and precision maxed, 0 glory points, all soul damage. He never signed a treaty, never sat for a photograph, and never stopped fighting for his people's right to exist. Crazy Horse lands in Tier 1 because he embodied the purest form of resistance, a warrior who fought without hate, led without fear, and died without surrender. Tecumseh. At number 3, meet Tecumseh, the Shawnee war chief who tried to unite every native nation into one unstoppable force. Born in 1768 near modern Chillicothe, Ohio, he came of age watching his people pushed west treaty by treaty, but Tecumseh refused to bow, saying, "Show respect to all people, but grovel to none." He saw what others didn't, that survival demanded unity. While his brother, the prophet Tenskwatawa, preached revival, Tecumseh built a confederacy, a multi-tribal alliance stretching from the Great Lakes to the Gulf. He went on a continent-wide campaign, dialogue trees maxed, persuasion stat god tier. To him, selling land to the US was unthinkable. Sell a country. Why not sell the air, the clouds, and the Great Sea as well? In 1811, while he was away rallying allies, U.S. forces burned Prophetstown, the heart of his movement. But he returned stronger, and in the War of 1812, his strategy nearly turned the tide, fighting alongside the British and outmaneuvering seasoned generals. He was killed at the Battle of the Thames in 1830, but his name became a rallying cry from Canada to the Gulf. His playstyle? The Unifier. alliance buffs active, charisma stat maxed, leadership passive unlocked. He fought not just for land, but for the idea of a shared nation. And even in death, that idea refused to die. We rank Tecumseh as number 3 because he nearly united a continent under one banner, a leader whose vision was centuries ahead of his time. Red Cloud. At number 2 we have Red Cloud, the Oglala Lakota war chief who did the unthinkable. He forced the United States to surrender. Born Mapia Luta in 1822 near the Platte River in modern Nebraska, Red Cloud rose from a skilled warrior to supreme strategist. He saw that power wasn't just won in battle, it was earned through unity, patience, and control. When the US built forts through Lakota hunting grounds along the Bozeman Trail, Red Cloud declared war. From 1866 to 1868, he led ambushes so precise they became textbook maneuvers. At Fetterman's Massacre near Fort Phil Kearny, 81 US soldiers rode into a trap and never rode out. His mastery of decoy tactics and terrain forced the US to sue for peace, ending with the Treaty of Fort Laramie, the only war the United States ever formally lost to a native nation. But Red Cloud never stopped fighting for his people's future. In his later years, he told US officials plainly, "We want to live. We make no objection to the way the white man wishes to live. Why cannot we live as we did before?" He died in 1909 at age 87, undefeated in war, unbroken in peace. His playstyle, siege tactician, control zones maxed, defense, deception, and terrain manipulation at expert level. He didn't just beat the US, he controlled the map until the time expired. Red Cloud is number 2 because he's the only native leader to win a full-scale war against the US and still had the courage to remind it what that victory meant. Cochise. At number 1, we end with Cochise, the Chiricahua Apache war chief who turned the mountains into fortresses and outsmarted 2 empires for over a decade. Born around 1805 in the Dragoon Mountains of modern Arizona, Cochise led the Chokonen band of the Chiricahua, a people who ruled the desert with speed, stealth, and uncanny terrain mastery. By the 1850s, he was known across the Southwest as a respected diplomat and a warrior who kept his word. Then came 1861, and the event that changed everything, the Bascom Affair. An American boy named Felix Ward, later known as Mickey Free, was kidnapped, but by Coyotero Apache raiders, not Cochise people. Still, Lieutenant George Bascom of the U.S. Army summoned Cochise to Apache Pass under a white flag to talk. Cochise arrived peacefully with his brother, 2 nephews, and 2 others from his band, but the meeting was a trap. Bascom tried to arrest him. Cochise slashed through the tent wall and escaped, while his family was taken hostage. Over the next few days, both sides took hostages and blood was spilled. Who struck first is still disputed, but in the end, Bascom's men hanged Cochise's brother and nephews, and there was no turning back. That betrayal ignited a war that would burn for more than 10 years. Cochise struck back with precision, ambushing wagon trains, raiding supply lines, and attacking isolated forts from Apache Pass to Fort Bowie. He moved his people through the Dragoon and Chiricahua Mountains like smoke on the wind, impossible to track, impossible to catch. The US Army threw thousands of soldiers at him, but they couldn't match his use of terrain, hit-and-run tactics, and misdirection. Cochise turned the desert into a chessboard, and the US Army never learned how to play. He built alliances across Apache bands, and even with the Nedni and Chihina groups, coordinating raids and supply sharing through a network of runners and scouts. His campaign was pure asymmetry, small squads, infinite mobility, using the map itself as a weapon. His strategy was simple: never fight where the enemy expected, never let them know where you'd gone until it was too late. By 1872, both sides were exhausted. When U.S. General Oliver Howard came to negotiate, Cochise met him not as a defeated rebel, but as a sovereign equal. During those talks, he said, "The white man and the Indian are to drink of the same water, eat of the same bread, and be at peace." That treaty ended the war, on his terms. He retired to his homeland in the Dragoon Mountains, where his people say his spirit still rides with the wind. His playstyle? Mountain Phantom. terrain mastery 100%, stealth and escape stats maxed, the ultimate defense build. He fought two empires, Mexico and the United States, and bent to neither. He made peace only when he could do it as an equal and died undefeated. Cochise is number one because he fought without losing, negotiated without surrendering, freed his people to live on their own land, and turned resistance itself into a masterpiece of strategy and pride. They fought empires and rewrote the rules of resistance. From Manuelito's endurance to Cochise's defiance, these weren't just warriors, they were tacticians, visionaries, and legends no army could erase. They didn't fight for conquest, they fought for existence, and their legacy still stands. So tell me, if you had to pick one, which warrior would you play as?